Hello and welcome to Uncle Data. And this year I'm collaborating with PyCon Lithuania to bring you conversations with keynote speakers. And today I'm joined by Merve Noyan. She's an ML engineer at Hugging Face and who's made significant contributions to NLP, computer vision, and multimodal models. So, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's super fun to actually have you and, like catching you up after your keynote. I most likely will have questions, what's related, what you talked about, for the listeners actually to listen about it. But, before that, let's talk about your journey, to the Hugging Face. How did that end up, and how did you actually choose, to your journey, to NLP and multimodal models now?
So I'm currently no longer working in NLP. I work more in computer vision and multimodal. Initially, I was working in NLP basically to begin from the archaic times. I loved AI and data science in general. I loved observing people's behaviors over data, and also back in the day, there were stuff like text classification. Even that felt very magical to me. The fact that you can just predict overall sentiment, aggregated sentiment. So yeah, I really liked it. And then I took some classes at school to learn about Python, AI, data science and stuff. Yeah, and I joined after school. I was sent to interviews and stuff. And then I told my family, okay, I'm going to study very hard and I'm going to become a data scientist and everything's going to be all right. So they stopped sending me. And after that, I started getting into communities and people were sharing what they know. And I was really impressed. I learned a lot. So I thought of sharing what I know as well. I started writing and stuff. After a while, I found my first job. It was around NLP and data science at the same time. Those startups where you wear multiple hats. We were doing chatbots in the old times with the intent classification and predefined responses and stuff. Currently, it's not really imagined. Yeah, and I started my master's again in data science with a deep learning focus. I have then found my second job. It was another company where I was doing again chatbots, information retrieval, and I was writing backend as well. And in the same time, in my first job, towards the end of my first job, I met Hugging Face. It was quite magical for me. I was doing question answering with transformers. I really liked transformers. And then I really learned a lot from our chief scientist, Thomas Wolf. I was mesmerized by everything Hugging Face had to offer. They announced some contribution sprints, and I joined them. I contributed to datasets library initially, and they were like, okay, you are contributing and you are also helping other people. Because I was solving other people's CI/CD issues at the same time. So they wanted to have me. Initially, I couldn't join, but as I left my second job, I decided to join them. I was very excited. I'm still very excited to work at Hugging Face, to be frank. Yeah, I think that's how I ended up there.
And what now actually you're doing there, since, I guess some of the listeners, weren't in the keynote where you explain actually what you do, so can you do a quick recap, on what you're focusing, since you mentioned multimodal models, right? Maybe anything else, or what's worthy for listeners to actually research?
To be frank, at Hugging Face is a very proactive culture, and you pick what you want to work on. So initially, the things that I worked on have changed over time, and currently, I sometimes contribute to the libraries that we have, like small agents. I develop the vision. I developed the vision support recently, for instance. I I build scripts that people can use to train and fine-tune multimodal models. I write documentation because I sometimes notice that people do not know how to use these models. So recently, these are what I'm working on. These are the recent stuff that I have been doing.
So basically, back again, wearing multiple hats.
Yeah. But it's very enjoyable and not like breaking production at 3 a.m. wake up type of thing.
Yeah, true. So, like, since you mentioned that you're looking at documentation, like working on different things, so do you talk maybe with some users, or gather their feedback?
Yeah, all the time. I do. I do over like Twitter, LinkedIn. They reach out and I try to help them out as well. For instance, like today, someone said, how do small agents and the existing models work on CAPTCHAs, which made me think maybe I can just benchmark that.
That's true. Okay, so like since you mentioned, now you're working more on computer vision, these kind of things. So, how in your eyes, how fast we went, from using, OpenCV, extracting face, facial data, facial features, like to properly understand, in this picture, we have like 4 cats, and these kind of things, to what we have even, now, what you showed in an example, we can actually, ask a question about the photo, of that.
To be frank, I think in the industry, people are still using very specific models and people are still using OpenCV. People are using YOLO models, for instance, for object detection. And there are transformers-based models as well within the transformers library that you can easily use. But the thing is, recent changes with the vision language models, they usually have out of the box, you can just make the model do segmentation. You can generate even depth estimation maps and stuff like that. I find it good to learn about a certain thing because I saw people doing this. And I think it's cool because it lowers the barrier of entry to do computer vision in general. People love to talk to vision language models and just letting it do the work. But in my opinion, when you go for production, you should be using smaller and more specific models to cut on costs and have more privacy because you're working with faces and stuff. The paradigm evolves to more generalistic, larger models because of the user behavior. But I think in the industry, it's the smaller and specific models still stay. And they are not going anywhere. And we also have more specific models coming up all the time as well.
I do feel that actually smaller models. I do assume that they will be kind of in a way of the future because you're gonna have like multiple specifically trained things that will help you do specific tasks, and maybe you will have one single entry point for that, and will just route things that will know what to ask or what to prompt in this way, and it will help way better than the generic ones, because like in the examples actually I've seen generic ones tend to drift off a bit in some cases, just because they tend to have like way broader reach on that. You mentioned vision language models, and we mentioned also multimodal models. I do assume that majority, like I'm harsh maybe to say that the majority, but like some of the people will not know what they actually mean. So maybe you can give a quick recap, what they actually do.
Yeah. So vision language models are models that can understand image and text at the same time. And these models, like for instance, initially when it came out, the most popular one was GPT-4o. It can take in image and text at the same time and output text. Some of these can just generate images these days. These are also vision language models. And also models that can understand image and text, but not necessarily output text, are also considered vision language models, like Clip model by OpenAI. For instance, when you go to your iPhone gallery, when you type a striped cat and you get all of the striped cat images, those are backed with the vision language models as well.
I do assume it's way smaller model because it's
Yeah.
trained on your phone's data actually, or maybe if it's in the cloud.
It's generalistic probably, but small. But I don't think I think it's local, in my opinion.
Let's hope for it. Similar I think feature Google has in their photos. Because you can actually do a search on your phone if you want, and actually on the website of Google Photos. Actually, if you type it, it actually captures everything. And when they added facial tagging, or they understood
Yeah.
which one, prompt you. So who's that? Can add the name to it, and then grouped everything. So it's way easier now for me, to check my pictures, where I am and search. Okay. One other thing I actually wanted to ask you actually is, you mentioned so many models, right? So many different technologies. How do you keep up with that? Because AI and ML is exploding. There's each and every day there's something new. How do you catch up to this so fast, and how do you know so much?
Well, to be frank, working at Hugging Face helps quite a lot because I have a lot of colleagues who can separate the signal from the noise. But if I didn't work at Hugging Face, I would just continuously check Hugging Face models page because the algorithm, the trending algorithm at Hugging Face basically ranks models according to number of downloads, number of likes, number of discussions in the recent days. So if something is actually making noise and if something is worth looking at, you will always find them. And you can also filter according to the task that you want, for instance, for text generation, I don't know, for object detection and stuff. So the recent stuff are already there. And you can go to the model repository and just to read what the model is about, check the paper, play with it. There is a widget inside the model repository. I think if I didn't have that, I would go for it. And if one level deeper, if I was an AI researcher, there's also papers feature of Hugging Face, hf.co/papers. In papers, they are curated or submitted by people. Every day there's a selection of papers, and I would check them probably.
Oh, every day. That sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
But I guess it makes sense of the world of AI. And you mentioned, your wonderful colleagues, so let's switch maybe, to the Hugging Face, right? Because it's it's not a fresh company actually, right? It's been there for a while, it started with a bit different approaches with transformers, if I'm not mistaken, BERT and others.
Yes.
And it started like this, and then it started to unfold. So what's the current role, or how actually Hugging Face sees, the open ML tooling, or letting people explore what's out there on the open source?
I think Hugging Face, in the center, there is Hugging Face Hub, which is our platform for all the machine learning related artifacts, the models, data sets, and demos, and other things. It's sort of this place to share and use machine learning models. And then there is libraries built around it, and these libraries are always meant to be, always up to date on the recent paradigm changes and stuff. So whatever paradigm change there's probably a Hugging Face library around it. And these libraries also make it easier for you to adapt to the state of the art and use state of the art models easily, instead of you going through the code base of whatever PyTorch model is. You have the unified interface, which is transformers. And transformers is becoming the central format for other model formats as well. Whenever a transformers model will come up, other formats such as VLLM and others will always adapt from transformers. So transformers is actually going to be it currently is, I guess, the central format because it's a unified API. It makes it easy for others to learn about the model and just the standard way of loading and using and fine-tuning the model. So the current vision that we recently adopted is pretty much this.
It makes sense, I guess if you change the model ID that you're using, you don't have to change anything. You can actually figure out what works for you best for your specific scenario. Because I do feel, that with that many models out there, right, not all of them will like work properly or like that accurately that you expect them to work. So that's quite nice. Also, if I was thinking, like there were talks about, like so-called, benchmarking of the models, right? So what are your thoughts in general on benchmarking, right? Because I do feel, that in some scenarios, some people might leak some data, of like benchmarking, to make it better. I do feel that sometimes it's not intentional or whatnot. So what are your thoughts in general on benchmarking LLMs?
So you mean about benchmarking per performance or latency and other things?
I would say, the score of like how good is it? Like if we're talking about from your even from your keynote, right, where you showed the performance. I'm
Ellie Marina.
Yes.
Um,
Do you believe that it's accurate?
I think LM Arena is your best bet if you want to trust a model's performance per human preference, because at the end of the day, we want models to be helpful and giving good responses. So LM Arena actually helps doing that. And other benchmarks, on the other hand, are just curated data sets, basically, with the either ratings on the answers or correct answers, for instance, for math problems and such. These type of data sets, the models are oftentimes saturating over these data sets, and it might not actually mean that that model is like great per human preference. So I think LM Arena makes a lot of sense in that way. And then if you want to assess the performance of the model, for instance, for math and other things, you can look at the specific evaluation. So the current paradigm is this. I think it works more or less to advance the models, and people do genuinely like the models that are ranked in the top of the LM Arena leaderboard.
I guess, it's also works with human mind, right? Where they actually see, that, oh, it's high rated. It must be good. And another one question that actually, like, which also resonates with what you were asked during the keynote about safetiness, right? Because, in Hugging Face, there are tons of things. So maybe we can touch on that topic as well, so the listeners who actually missed the keynote, they would be aware of that you will not download malicious code, when you're using Hugging Face, and why?
Yeah. So basically, the formats like Pickle or JobLib are actually used to serialize code, and it's actually used to serialize code that that is. It's not someone else's code, or it can be sent to someone else, but that someone else should know that code when when unserialized, because when you unserialize it, you're executing, is not going to harm the computer. So Pickle wasn't built to serialize models. It was never like that. Actually, at some point at Hugging Face, I was with two other colleagues that were scikit-learn maintainers. We were developing a library called skops. It's like MLOps for scikit-learn. And we were trying to come up with new file format. It was, again, called skops. It was scanning the operations and stuff. For the PyTorch models, though, it's different. It's not super different, but it's different. So, like my colleagues, I don't know about the internals of safe tensors, but my colleagues came up with a format called safe tensors that is now the industry standard. It is also integrated to many libraries now to load models. It's completely safe if you see a model in safe tensors format, it is completely safe to download and load that model. But again, like you shouldn't be using PyTorch model format or like others, in my opinion. Yeah.
I guess, that with that note, also, be careful what you're actually downloading from the internet if it's not a trusted source, Suddenly, like my PC started to act up. What did I do? Maybe those 50 widgets that appeared on my screen, maybe they have to do something like that. Ah, nice. Since we talked about downloading, we talked about, your role. So for me, it's like, and as well as you mentioned that you like to share, your findings, you're quite active in the social media, like sharing your thoughts and ideas.
Yes.
And there, my question there, how do you find time for that? And how do you prioritize, what should go first, what go last, where should I focus? Maybe on the docs, maybe, on the community, maybe, research something new.
To be frank, everyone at Hugging Face, like every engineer at Hugging Face, is responsible from sharing their work because we work in open source, and we have to. If we do not share what we do, people will never discover them on their own. It's very hard, especially with open source libraries. So we do that. Most of it is within our job. Some of them I do them voluntarily. And when I see like a model that is worth sharing, for instance, I feel like people should know about them. Like, for instance, I told you that I believe in like small and specific models that do the job over large models. I really want people to get started with them easily. And that's why I'm sharing those models specifically along with the code snippet that people can run and just test for themselves. Many people appreciated it, so I keep doing that, as well as I do like sort of weekly compilations on the noteworthy models and datasets that were released for that week. It's something that I do out of my job in a way, not within my job, and I really, really like it. Yeah.
Okay. So I see a recurring topic, almost everyone I talk, is that actually, if you want to get started with open source, docs are one of the best place to start.
Yes.
And if it's greatly written, you actually can do a lot of things. So moving from the docs, to their tutorials or like, what you're sharing, how do you have any process how you create them? Maybe because that will help, for someone else if they're thinking of doing something like that.
To be frank, like Hugging Face has many great courses if you want to get started, if you're a course person. I think I'm no longer a course person. Like I was very much a course reading person maybe like 3 years ago. But if you're a beginner, they are very useful because they compile every single thing that you need to do. For me, I kind of firstly try to dig into the source code as well as the docs to get started. I mean, initially you do have to go through the docs, but if you want something more customized, you kind of end up checking the API itself within the source code. So I just try to come up with ideas, like come up with a project idea or something that I want to use the project in, and then I like to build that. For instance, with small agents, we recently developed a CLI, how do you say, some CLI commands to get started with like a web browsing agents and so on. I was like, okay, this is really cool. I would like to build this. So with the core maintainer, we just build it. And in the meantime, I learned from the source code, I learned about how agents work. It's called the React framework. I learned about how the agent actually works and stuff, which gave me this intuition that I can build so many things now. So I would rather just go and build. I think it's the best way of learning, but it's not for everyone.
Yeah, true. And I guess, like go and build, it has to be meaningful. Like you said, you
Yeah.
have to figure out what, what actually triggers your like, or what's problem you want to solve, because otherwise it's going to be, one day you're doing this, other day you're already forgotten because it's kind of a useless information at that point because you got it done. It wasn't exciting and so on. I guess, like since you mentioned you were a course person 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Now, you're kind of producing some of the content. Maybe, and I also knew from the keynote, someone from the audience, shouted out about the like courses from Hugging Face.
Yes.
How do those are created? You internally do them?
To be frank, I don't create courses myself.
I mean the team.
I do, the team. So like, I think they just try to get you started with the with the with what you want to build as soon as possible, which I really admire. And they also try to give you intuition, but they do not drown you in the theory. And that's something I like about them. I rather like, for instance, for me, I have a project called Small Vision, and it contains a lot of scripts and notebooks on training, quantizing, and different, like it has everything about like vision language models, large vision models, and so on. Like if you want to do object detection, if you want to fine tune, etc. I like self-contained notebooks that fits into a certain workflow. If you want to fine tune a model, you can find it in Small Vision, for instance. And I try to adapt it to the paradigm changes as well. So yeah, I like things that immediately lets you build instead of drowning you in the theory. I'm more practical, you might say.
That's super nice. Like then they have a follow-up question, right? If you're trying a course, like even going through examples you made, do you need a beefy PC or laptop, for this? Because like in some cases, like maybe you don't have a GPU that worthy or like that fast, like are there some requirements that you have to think before?
I think for agentic stuff, you definitely need either a good work setup, what do they call, like a setup, or you need some credits from model providers, because basically agentic models are like quite generalistic and complex models, and it's very hard to find an agentic model that is small. But for my case, for computer vision and multimodal models, so for computer vision, you definitely do not need that. Some of the tutorials that I have written can be ran in T4, L4 GPUs. T4, as far as I know, is available in Colab free tier, for instance. And for multimodal ones, some of them might be too big, but not super big. You can still have them in Colab. Most of the time L4 as well. So it really depends on what you want to do.
Okay. So let's say now, like I personally, we have not that much in common with actual ML and AI. I'm more like on the data preparation, on that side. And like I do have, basic knowledge and statistics on that. But like if I actually want to go deeper in this area, right? Do you have maybe some suggestions? Where should I start?
That's a good question. And again, it kind of depends on which vertical you would like to advance in. Like if it's about LLMs, is it about...
Let's go with LLMs. I do feel, that here, in order not to like jump to the train late, right? You have to still have a broader understanding how everything works. So I do feel that I have some knowledge, but I still need some more. Now the question is, like, LLMs maybe is a good place maybe to start. What do you think?
I guess, yeah. So one of my colleagues, one of the authors of the agents course, is reviving the NLP course of Hugging Face. We have a long NLP course of Hugging Face. We did it when I was first onboarded, like 3.5 years ago. It contained very traditional NLP in the sense that you would train BERT on question answering and stuff. And it wasn't really adapted a lot to LLMs. And now it's being revived to LLMs. You can do that. If you don't want to wait for it because it's currently in development, there are many sources online, like unpaid courses as well. And if you want to just get your hands dirty, you can try, for instance, like if your goal is to fine tune models, like you have a dataset and stuff. We have a library called Transformers Reinforcement Learning, TRL, for instance. It has a lot of example notebooks, so you can try them. Good thing that people aren't aware of, in my opinion, is Hugging Face blog has like few very good intuitive blog posts. For instance, when you Google vision language models, like the first result that you will see is a blog by me and my colleague Ed. It's like a very long blog post explaining the things about vision language models that you can also come across in my keynote. There's a reason why they are very good. It's because they are like very in detail and trying to get you started with the right away. There is one from my colleagues about mixture of experts, for instance, and explaining the things behind it. There's a lot of them, and you can just find them through Googling the term that you would like to learn. I really like the fact that my colleagues are like very helpful people, and they are very smart people. So like they want other people to learn about things. They take their time to explain stuff. So yeah, like I think it's a bit hard in the sense that you do not know which one to learn first. But in my opinion, if you just get started, for instance, like there are so many models, local serving libraries, like Llama. If you just get started, you will know what you want to do next. And there is something for it online that you will find, and then you will be able to accomplish that. I think it all starts with the project idea that you want to build, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, but that's true. You have to get your feet wet, and then
Yes,
figure
yes.
out do you want to swim now, and to what direction you actually want to go there. I'm thinking, since like in Hugging Face, as I see, it's like open source for ML. You mentioned a lot of things, and I do feel that majority of people like are actually a bit afraid maybe to contribute to open source.
Yeah.
Why do you think they are?
I think it's a bit of fear of failure or stuff like around it, I guess, or embarrassment because you're building in open and people will think. I feel like so many people in tech have imposter syndrome. It might even be about imposter syndrome, in my opinion. If you just, for me, I just assume that I am very rookie in many times. If I like when I build in open, and I learn a lot from other people. So it's a good thing to assume that you are a rookie and in everything, and that just get started, and then you can go with the flow. Other than that, if you like when you go to repositories, there is like issues, and then over there you can filter for good first issues. Those are low-hanging fruits that you can get started with open source. You can just pick one of them up and try to solve it. But even if you're afraid of that, what I suggested, for instance, on the documentation, for instance, if you find something, you can just fix that. Like you can just open a pull request to fix that and see how the things work. Like, for instance, you learn about CI/CD, you learn about reviews, you learn about how to use Git. Like, on a very basic level, you can start with that. And then up next, as soon as you learn about how that team works and how the contributions work, you can just go to, for instance, Transformers library, filter for issues, and just pick one up.
Yeah, I guess like also like what you mentioned, the first thing first is like actually get the documentation as a good
Yeah.
thing to get your feet wet. Then like I do have a question in a way, is that in some cases the flow might be complicated, or like in a way it's kind of open source, but the flow might be over convoluted. Are there any ways to prevent, or just like leave the project alone and just move somewhere forward different?
I mean, it depends. Are you would you be solving a very hard issue?
I would say, it depends. I guess, if you just like do a simple change, right? And then you'll see like multiple flags going up for, even if it's not a breaking change, but let's say you get like some people are just, no, it's not the way how we do it, or so on. Like, have you seen maybe examples like this, or something like that?
Let me think. I mean, it happens many times. I just try to help them out. Sometimes people don't know how to do, for instance, how to solve merge conflicts, for instance, is very hard for them, and then they get scared and shy away and never look back on their pull requests, which saddens me because I'm there to help them out. This happens, for instance, and yeah, I think this is one of them. Another one is perhaps the updated version, like, when you merge main into that pull requests branch, the things break, and again, people shy away. It's completely normal, though. They are not supposed to know all of the code base anyway. So these are actually human problems, and like human problems are harder to solve, in my opinion, than technical problems. Yeah. I offer my help, like I just circle back in the PR and say, do you actually need help? But I don't get responses.
People are like, oh, someone's offering help, what should I do? What should I do? But like, but actually, I do get your idea. For me, it's like when I did some contributions, I went through a pain in some cases, because I was like thinking in a bit different way. Then I got some errors here and there. Like I'm already panicking. So I broke the thing. Like people will be angry on me. Like what should I do? Then naturally, panic like a turtle. Like go inside the shell. And wait. If someone says something or not, then no one says anything. Like. Should I continue or not? And it's like complete wheel of emotions, flow through you. What to do, and then like.
Sorry.
But that's I do assume that's a natural thing, because you tested it out. It works, right? It's not a big change like a logic or like the engine change or whatnot. Small change, something breaks. Oh shit, I did something wrong. The imposter, like you mentioned, like everyone in technology has it. Like, oh crap, I broke it. I don't I'll just keep it, they can revert it, I'll never get back. But I do feel, I do understand, like how others, feel about it and how they actually react. And it's a bit strange in some cases, that actually so many smart people, and for such a small detail, it kind of scares them. But if it would happen on their company they're working on, right? Yeah, it would be casually solved, no panic, right?
It's a matter of building an open, like it's not an easy thing. It's a bit like being vulnerable in that sense, because people can actually assess your competence, and like I think it's an imposter syndrome type of thing. For me, I would have it too, I guess, if I was contributing to a new code base. But now, when you think like when you become someone working in open source, you notice that it's a very casual thing, and that you shouldn't fear that, because no one is supposed to know your code base in general, and you realize that what you have is actually very complex, and you feel amazed by people who try to fix things in such a huge code base. So like, actually open source maintainers appreciate pull requests a lot.
I love it when you say, it's a casual thing, for me, like, getting the courage up, actually to do something, it's like, no, I shouldn't do that, like I actually do respect people, when I see, someone bragging on LinkedIn, my PR got merged on that, like, damn, he knows so much, even though if it's a doc change, it doesn't matter.
I think it comes from the fact that like, it's not like, when I say casual, I mean when you become an person in open source, and when you want to contribute to another open source library, you just are less intimidated. Okay. Is what I mean.
Okay, yeah, because you already went through the hell, once. Now you know the ropes.
Yeah, you just can empathize with the maintainers, and maintainers are definitely not thinking a bad thing about your project. Is what, like, about your PR, and they see that you are trying to help, and they actually appreciate it. So when you look from their perspective, you become much more encouraged to contribute.
Mm. Yeah, actually makes sense. So, like from your experience, have you seen any, like, how to say, like misconceptions? Like, we talked about imposter syndrome, right? That people think they're not capable of doing that, or like they're afraid of doing that, right? Maybe other misconceptions that are particularly like in the AI or ML field.
I think there is this group of people that think that they have to know everything before diving in. That's a huge misconception. I think, again, like if you just have a problem at hand to solve, and if you just get your hands dirty if you are willing to do that, you will learn much more than, just trying to learn every single thing.
I wanted to
Like
ask,
you can just go through the internals by time and just learn yourself.
I think one thing I wanted to ask is, let's say if I'm not a math genius, can I actually do some tweaks on that, because
Yeah.
like if you don't understand math, like, and knowing like the math or like the generic math behind it, when you go to the models, and especially, neural networks, if there, like you're seeing, so many things. Oh, do we have the sigmoid, activations? Okay, something else, some new terms coming there. Like, what are those things? But then you actually, try to fix it, try to adjust it. You actually know what to Google then.
I think it's a matter of how granular you are willing to go. Like you might be someone who wants to serve only the models. It's perfectly fine. You don't have to know about anything. If you want to fine tune a model, you can just again get your hands dirty, and you can learn about perhaps like you need to make sense of the model outputs if you feel like it. For instance, like a good example is clip versus siglip. Siglip uses sigmoid activations, and the outputs aren't really adding up to one, which might seem weird, but the most probable class seems super more probable than the others. Like, for instance, there is like 50%, first class is 50%, the rest are like 3%, 1%. Meanwhile, clip is adding up to one, like their probabilities. So if you want to make sense of the outputs, for instance, you can learn stuff like this. If you want to fine tune, most of the time, again, online, you can see like the fine tuning scripts that are out there. You don't have to do maths. If you want to improve, like if it works well, that's also how I got started with NLP. Actually, initially, I was doing NLP, of course, with the old school libraries like Spacey and others. Shout out. But then when I met Transformers, I fine-tuned it. I fine-tuned the model on a task called natural language inference. And I was using ready-to-use scripts, and then I assessed like what was going on. Like I went in the rabbit hole of Transformers after it. But for a long time, I didn't need any maths to just fine-tune a model to get started, like it depends on the level of granularity that you want to have and how much willing you are to improve your outputs.
Okay. Yeah, I get the idea, and like I kind of understand what you're saying. Now, like I'm gonna ask one interesting question, since you mentioned, like in the keynote, about the use cases, right? About the vision language models, in general, vision in general, right? So one of the applications actually robots, right?
Yeah.
So, actually you can do things, and, then you have like the problem of privacy in a way,
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas, how can actually, ensure at least some sort of privacy actually running some models without leaking the data somewhere? So let's say, you have like on Wednesday, we had a keynote, about privacy and ethics by Kushal Das. And he actually showed, like one example where Roomba was actually, like scanning this, and, they kind of accidentally leaked photos of someone, in the bathroom or whatnot, right? So I do assume, that with these kind of models, you have to also protect from leakage, like data leakage, so no one could access it. And I guess if you don't own the LLM or like the model, you don't know the data what it has. Um, I think like after hearing your thoughts on this, like for me, like maybe you see some areas of improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about very different aspects of like ML and AI in general, right? So maybe you see some like I don't know where some tooling missing or like needs some improvement, or what people actually maybe should focus in some areas more, right? Maybe the like I know there can be a shout out, to some project that actually is underrated or like no like not that many people know about it. Like, mm, yeah, and like now I feel like you mentioned a lot of things. Like I now I have to digest everything I do. Like I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, and knowing that
Sorry.
no, it's fine. I kind of expected this to happen. Not knowing much, and like talking with you, who knows, like worked on different things. Like I kind of expected this, but I do feel that with AI and ML field like evolving or like moving in such a rapid pace, actually, like many people might feel, so maybe you have advice, like, or where to focus for them, or like what to consider, then, what's noise, because you said, that you have
Yeah.
colleagues who can
Yeah.
filter that for you. So what about for the rest of the guys, who's more casual to this? Okay, now I have to think of ideas, how to automate my stuff, yeah, that's the point, just like patch some things, like that will go crawl the web, get you the, okay, you should read based on your interest, from previous, you should read on these upcoming, repos, or tools or whatever. Uh, True, though I have seen, in some cases that, some of those, let's say, stars in some ways are in some projects. I think I noticed that they were like artificially raised, like in very, very specifics. I think they
Oh, I
removed
get
that
it.
one.
At least that's how I.
No, I'm not. Yeah, like I guess, from there you actually also have to, like go deeper, figure out if it's actually worth, for you to look at and so on. It's not like, you should blindly, just check what's at the top.
Of
Uh, cool. So thank you, Merve,
Thank
for
you for
talking. It was fun, and yeah,